Near the end of Season 1, something happens in Hazbin Hotel that Season 2 never mentions again. And I know you're immediately thinking this must be a small, trivial thing that we just overlooked. Well, let me tell you now, it's not. It's the bit at the end of Season 1 where Lute tells Lilith that Adam is dead. She then says their deal is over, she claims control, and she orders Lilith to go back to hell and stop Charlie. This gives the audience a huge cliffhanger for the end of Season 1 to go into Season 2. But what happens in Season 2? Nothing. So Lilith gets up and walks where exactly? What happens to her in Season 2? Why does she not respond to Lute in any way? I mean, Lilith doesn't argue, she doesn't defend her daughter, she doesn't even speak, she just looks at her and the screen cuts to black. And this has left the entirety of the fanbase confused because this is setting up, obviously, Season 2, but it never happens. So what does all this mean? I'm going to be breaking all this down in today's video because there's something far darker in this message. Because if heaven was fully in control here, they wouldn't need to threaten her at all. You see, it's fairly obvious. Lute's first words are, Adam is dead. That's pretty straightforward. We see him die at the end of Season 1, unfortunately, because I'm a big Adam fan. She then says, your deal is done. It's not our deal, it's your deal is done, indicating it was with someone else, and that someone was obviously Adam, hence why she said Adam was dead in the first place. But what exactly was her deal? That isn't clear at this stage. It will become clear later on though, but what was clear is that Adam's deal is no longer in effect because Adam is dead, and Lute then says, I'm in charge now. Now, immediately I thought that meant she was in charge of everything, in charge of the Exorcist army, but Season 2 totally reframes that. She isn't in charge, it's Adam's son, so it means she's not in charge of the army, she's in charge of the deal, something which is finished and done, as she puts it. Meaning whatever deal Lilith did have with Adam is now done and is not in effect with Lute. She then quite bluntly and rudely refers to Lilith's kid, Charlie, as a brat. That's a direct insult right there. She says your brat is threatening the very foundation of heaven, and Lilith doesn't even respond. And obviously Lute is clearly referring to Charlie and that she is a threat to heaven's safety, which in Season 2 we already know that because Vox had learned that they can rise up against the angels and try and take on heaven. So Lute's estimations here were 100% correct. She is a threat to heaven. Not directly, but she's challenging the ideas of heaven and hell. Let's not forget. Remember what Adam says in episode 1? Hell is forever. She then says, if you want to stay here, you're going down there and stopping that bitch. That is a direct threat right there. There's no speculation. She's saying if you want to stay in this paradise, you're going to go down there and stop her. That doesn't happen in Season 2 though. Oh no, she just continues her work. We only really see Lilith again at the end of Season 3 where they're dropping another cliffhanger of Lilith's return. But they did that in Season 1 and she didn't return. So we're going to have another season without her again? And why did she even vanish in the first place? What is this deal? Well, we can immediately say that Lilith is no prisoner in heaven. She wants to be up there. Lute has made that clear by threatening her, we're going to remove you if you don't do as we say. That indicates that Lilith wants to stay in heaven. And at no point is Lute worried about Lilith going down to hell and helping her daughter. Not one bit. She's actually extremely confident that Lilith will go down there and stop her. She's not worried about her siding with her daughter in the slightest. But why would Lilith be in heaven in the first place? Well, for that, let's look at the story episode. How her and Lucifer gave Eve the apple. And not long after that, Lilith ended up becoming such an influence to all the sinners of hell that she literally grew this massive reputation. Hell, even Vox mentions her in Season 2 as this huge inspiration. So what happened to that rebellion? Did it just stop? She had a massive influence and all that suddenly disappears? I don't think so. I believe that's where the deal actually came in between Lilith and heaven, because heaven needed to stop Lilith and needed her to disappear. Coincidentally, just like when Rosie needed Alastor to disappear for a bit. Coincidence? And did you notice something about Lilith? She's not depicted here with her horns, almost as if she's trying to hide them. She also isn't actually in the city. You can clearly see that. There's no walls, nothing at all. She just seems to be in some type of paradise, away from prying eyes. There's no one around. The horns could have a simpler explanation though. We do know that obviously Charlie and Lucifer can make their horns disappear and only really appear in their demonic form. You can assume the same thing for Lilith, but what you can't make disappear is the fact that Alastor disappeared at almost the same time as Lilith, during the same period as well. There's a link there, and how then he mysteriously shows up in the hotel where her daughter works. And here's something we haven't even addressed yet, that Lilith is Adam's ex-wife. Perhaps part of the deal was that Adam wouldn't attack Charlie directly. But if that was the case, why would he do so at the end of season 1? Which begs the question, do any of the other beings in heaven know of Lilith's existence there? You know, Sarah, Speaker of God, or is it just literally Lute and Adam? Because the way Lute speaks to Lilith indicates that she's not afraid of her in the slightest, that she's got her in the pocket, so to speak. I mean, I'd find it extremely odd that the woman who is in hell and caused this huge uprising, a huge influential figure, and heaven knows nothing about her disappearance, and that she all of a sudden just stopped caring about hell and her family in general, even though she was super passionate about causing this uprising. I mean, the creator Viv herself actually described Lilith and Lucifer as having a Morticia and Gomez-like dynamic before, and that doesn't seem to be the case at all in the series. Unless something broke them apart, something forced them to be apart. They didn't actually want to split. We don't actually see any part of their relationship in the show. We don't see her being abusive, him being abusive. We just see him being very upset that he's not with his wife. And interestingly, he still refers to her as his wife. It's almost as if they were forced to disband the rebellion and part. But by who? God? Heaven? God seems to be missing, and we've covered that in past videos. But there clearly is a God because there's a speaker for him. You know, the speaker of God. So where's he gone? Is this part of his master plan? Well, we won't cover that because we covered it in another video. Let's get back on pace with Lilith and Lute's deal. Well, sorry, lack of, because that is now done. The real question is Lilith the problem here? We see on multiple occasions that Charlie is trying to reach out to her mother for ages, and Lilith clearly isn't responding in any sort of way. But that does indicate, though, that Charlie has reached her in the past. Otherwise, why would you keep on trying to not be answered? It indicates that they have had a past relationship. So perhaps she isn't as evil as people are actually thinking she is. Could it be that she agreed to stop her rebellious songs that unified hell in exchange for the safety of her child? And potentially even Lucifer, that the likes of heaven wouldn't target Charlie. If that was the case, would she knowingly let Adam go down there and exterminate the majority of hell every 12 months? It just doesn't seem right. See, the entire thing hinges on the fact that Lilith wants to be in heaven. Lute even says if you want to stay here, you're going to have to go down there and sort out your brat, indicating Lilith wants to be there. There is one thing we haven't talked about. Early on in season 2, Sarah and the High Sephirim instruct Lute to halt her plans for hell, which leads Lute to tell Lilith she's off the hook for the time being. And she does so by texting her. And immediately just after that, Charlie tries to call, but Lilith hangs up. This proves the theory that she is actively ignoring both Charlie and Lucifer. And it's at this point I'd like to bring up that Sarah wasn't shocked at all when Lute actually brought up Lilith. She didn't question Lute about how or why Lilith is in heaven. She just became extremely angry with Lute and told her to stop all actions, basically. This literally confirms that everyone, well, the higher-ups in heaven, know that Lilith is there, and they don't care. No one seems to bat an eyelid. You see, this entire thing stems from Charlie. They're scared that Charlie's going to expose something. Charlie doesn't threaten heaven's military as such. She threatens heaven's ideology. Heaven and hell, the way they're created, supposed to be black and white. Charlie completely threatens that. You see, there's something hugely bigger at play here. We do know there's a huge season coming. As referenced in my God video, there's going to be a good versus evil battle, with Rue, one of Viv's characters, being the root of all evil. Perhaps Lilith is actively staying away from her family in order to protect them for some reason. She's maintaining a sort of status quo. That's why heaven knows about her being in heaven. They're happy with this status quo. That is, until Serpentius and Charlie proved the theory of redemption, and now all hell, no pun intended, has literally broken loose. Season 2's seen Vox directly confront heaven. And heaven was scared. He literally blew the gates off the front of heaven, showing he could hurt, attack them, and probably take over. This then leads Lilith to enact her own plan, go back down to hell, and well, play her part, I believe, in unionizing all of hell for themselves, not for heaven. They don't need to go to heaven. They're their own people in hell. As we've seen with Serpentius, he wanted to go back to hell. Everyone in heaven are completely different to the people in hell. And the fact of the matter is, if you change your personality and your character, you do become redeemed if you're more like the people in heaven. But what if you don't want to be like them? What if you're actually in hell for a reason? Not because you're super nasty or mean or a murderer, just you committed some minor things in life. I mean, Serpentius, he was in hell because he didn't rat out a killer. He just turned the other way. But his personality did fit a person in hell. He enjoyed being there. He made friends. He didn't really belong in heaven to start with. Could it be that there always needs to be a good and evil as such, or a root, the root of all evil? And we haven't seen the pinnacle of heaven yet, the true God figure, so to speak, the goody, the boss of it all. Is there always two which have to exist? Like Sith, I suppose. There's always two. And that balance is now being upset. It was with Vox. Now Lilith has to spring back into action to protect her family, to protect heaven and hell, because there needs to be balance. And we know she's returning because the end of season 3 literally confirms this. And it's highly likely she's going to clash with Charlie's vision for the hotel, and not only that, she will clash with Alastor. It's no coincidence they both disappeared at the same time. And how Alastor himself ended up at the hotel. And what does this have to do with Rosie? Rosie wanted him at the hotel too, remember? If all these scenes and questions bother you, it should, and especially Lilith's silence. These stories aren't separate, they're all pointing to the same problem. Why is Nifty in the hotel? Why did she give her soul to Alastor? Where is God? All these answers are on the channel right now, and they all point to the same thing. If this kind of analysis is what you're here for, that's what this channel is about. And watch these other videos before this one sits with you for too long, because that was one hell of a theory. Thanks for watching.